The sun was sinking low behind the Wyoming hills when Jack Carter spotted something unnatural along the fence line. From a distance, it looked like a bundle of rags caught on barbed wire, fluttering weakly in the evening wind. Jack almost rode past it. Almost. Then the horse beneath him snorted and slowed, enslaying what Jack's tired eyes had missed. As he drew closer, his chest tightened. It wasn't rags. It was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 18. Her wrists were tied above her head with rough rope, cutting into her skin. Dirt streaked her face, dried blood clung to her lip, and her eyes, wide, glassy, and exhausted, flickered with fear when she heard him approach. Jack dismounted instantly, hands shaking as he cut the ropes free. She collapsed into his arms, light as a child, trembling uncontrollably. "Easy," Jack murmured, though his voice cracked. It had been years since he'd spoken softly to anyone. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders, shielding her from the cold in the world. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper came out. One word, a please. Jack lifted her onto his horse and rode hard for his ranch, anger burning hotter with every step. He'd lived alone since his wife died, choosing solitude over the ache of loss. But seeing this girl, broken, abandoned, stirred something he thought had long since died. At the ranch, Jack cleaned her wounds, gave her water, and sat nearby through the night in case she woke screaming. When she finally spoke, her voice barely held together. Her name was Lily. Her father drank. When he drank, he raged. Tonight, she'd tried to run. He caught her, tied her to the fence like she was nothing, and drove away laughing. Jack stared into the fire, jaw clenched. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Lily had nowhere else to go. And Jack realized, morning light revealed just how young Lily truly was. She moved cautiously around the ranch house, as if afraid one wrong step would earn punishment. Jack noticed everything. The way she flinched at sudden sounds, the way she apologized for breathing too loud, the way she kept her eyes down like she'd learned the world wasn't safe. He offered her breakfast. She hesitated before eating, as if permission could be revoked at any second. Jack didn't push. He never raised his voice, and slowly that made a difference. Over the next few days, Lily began to talk, not all at once, but in fragments. Her mother had died years ago. After that, the drinking got worse. There were no neighbors close enough to hear, no one who asked questions. She'd learned to survive by staying silent, until the night she couldn't anymore. Jack offered her a room, clean clothes, and a promise no one would hurt her here. Lily cried at that, not loud, but deep, shaking sobs that came from years of swallowed fear. Jack stood awkwardly at first, then rested a hand on her shoulder. Felt like stepping onto thin ice, but he stayed. Trouble came sooner than expected. A dusty pickup rolled up the ranch road one afternoon. Jack knew before the engine even stopped. Lily froze inside the house, terror written across her face. Her father staggered out, drunk and furious, accusing Jack of stealing what was his. Jack stepped forward, calm but unyielding. "You don't own her." The man laughed, until Jack didn't back down. The sheriff arrived minutes later, called by Jack earlier that morning, just in case. Lily watched from the doorway as her father was taken away, shouting threats that finally held no power. That night, Lily slept without locking her door for the first time in her life. Weeks passed and the ranch changed in quiet ways. Lily learned how to ride, how to mend fences, how to laugh, softly at first, then freely. Jack found himself smiling more than he had in years. The loneliness that once echoed through the house was slowly replaced with warmth. But healing isn't simple. Lily still had nightmares. Jack still carried guilt from a life he couldn't save before. Some nights they sat on the porch in silence, watching the stars, understanding each other without words. The court case came and went. Lily's father lost custody, sentenced for abuse. Social services offered to place Lily elsewhere, but she surprised them all. She chose to stay with Jack, who never claimed to be her savior, only someone who showed up. In time, Lily enrolled in school. She talked about dreams, college, maybe helping kids like her someday. Jack listened, proud in a way that scared him. Not ownership, not control, just care. Fui. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lily stood by the same fence where her life had almost ended. Jack joined her, concern flickering in his eyes. She reached out and touched the weathered wood, then turned to him. "You gave me a life." Jack swallowed hard. "So you saved yourself, kid." They watched the horizon together, two broken souls who didn't plan on meeting each other, but found healing anyway. Sometimes family isn't blood. Sometimes it's the stranger who stops when the world keeps riding past. The sun was sinking behind the wide Wyoming plains when Jack Carter noticed something wrong along the far fence line. At first, he thought it was trash caught on barbed wire, a dark shape fluttering weakly in the evening wind. He nearly rode past it, his mind heavy with the quiet loneliness that had defined his life for years. But as his horse slowed and snorted nervously, Jack followed its gaze and felt his stomach drop. It wasn't trash. It was a girl. She was tied to the fence, her arms stretched painfully above her head with coarse rope digging into her wrists. Dirt covered her clothes, and her bare feet were bruised and bleeding. Her face was pale beneath the dust, lips cracked, eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. When she heard Jack approach, her body tensed as if expecting another blow. Jack dismounted quickly, heart pounding, and cut the ropes with shaking hands. The moment she was free, her legs gave out and she collapsed against him, trembling so violently he feared she might break apart. He wrapped her in his coat, murmuring softly, words he hadn't used in years. She was light in his arms, far too light for someone who should have been stepping into adulthood, not tied to a fence like an animal. Her voice came out as a raw whisper when she finally spoke. She begged him not to leave her there. Jack lifted her onto his horse and turned toward his ranch, anger burning through him with every step. Whoever had done this didn't deserve mercy. At the ranch house, Jack cleaned her wounds as gently as he could, offering water and warmth. She flinched at every touch, yet never pulled away, as if pain was something she had learned to endure in silence. He sat nearby through the night, staring into the dying fire, guarding her sleep. When she finally woke, tears slipped down her cheeks as she told him her name was Lily. She was 18. Her father drank until rage consumed him, and when she tried to run, he tied her to the fence and drove off, laughing as if it were a joke. Jack said nothing at first. His jaw tightened as memories of his own losses pressed in, old grief mixing with fresh fury. He had chosen solitude after his wife's death, believing isolation was safer than caring again. But looking at Lily, broken yet still breathing, he knew that choice had ended the moment he stopped at the fence. Quietly, firmly, he told her she was safe here. For the first time that night, Lily allowed herself to cry, and Jack understood that saving her meant opening his heart to the risk of loss all over again. Morning came softly over the ranch, pale sunlight slipping through the windows and warming the quiet rooms. Lily woke with a sharp breath, her body tense, eyes darting as if she expected to find herself still tied to the fence. When she realized she was inside, wrapped in a clean blanket, she froze, unsure if safety was real or just another cruel trick. Every sound made her flinch, the creak of wood, the clink of dishes, even the wind outside. Jack moved carefully around her, giving her space without making her feel alone. He set a plate of food on the table and stepped back, as though afraid a sudden movement might send her running. Lily stared at the food for a long moment before eating, each bite small and cautious, like someone who had learned that kindness could disappear without warning. Jack watched quietly, noticing the way she whispered apologies for nothing at all, how her shoulders stayed drawn tight, as if she were bracing for a blow that never came. As the hours passed, Lily began to speak in broken pieces, her words halting but honest. Her mother had died when she was young, and after that the house filled with bottles and anger. There were nights she slept outside just to avoid him, nights she learned to stay silent to survive. The fence had been her punishment for trying to leave, for daring to believe she deserved more. Jack listened, his hands clenched into fists, a slow, steady fury building in his chest. No one should grow up learning fear as a language. Days turned into a fragile routine. Lily helped with small chores, stopping often to ask if she was doing them right, afraid of being sent away. Jack never raised his voice, never rushed her, and that alone began to heal something deep inside her. She slept more, ate more, and sometimes even smiled, though it vanished quickly like she didn't trust it to stay. Trouble arrived on the third afternoon in the form of a dusty pickup rattling down the long ranch road. Lily saw it through the window and went pale, her body locking in place. Jack already knew who it was. He stepped outside before the truck fully stopped, positioning himself between the house and the man who stumbled out smelling of alcohol and rage. Accusations flew, ugly and loud, but Jack stood firm, his voice calm and unshaken. He told the man she wasn't his property, never had been. The sheriff arrived soon after, called earlier by Jack when instinct told him this moment would come. Lily watched from the doorway as her father was taken away, his threats fading into the distance. That night, for the first time in her life, Lily slept without fear of footsteps in the dark, and Jack stayed awake, listening to the silence, knowing everything had changed. Time moved differently after that, as if the ranch itself had decided to slow down and give Lily room to breathe. Days blended into weeks, and with each sunrise she seemed a little steadier on her feet. The fear that once lived in her eyes didn't vanish overnight, but it softened, replaced by cautious curiosity. She learned how to ride under Jack's quiet guidance, gripping the reins too tightly at first, then laughing in surprise when the horse responded to her voice. The sound of that laughter stayed with Jack long after it faded into the open land. The house no longer felt empty. Lily filled the silences with small questions and observations, and Jack found himself answering them without thinking, sharing pieces of a life he had kept buried since his wife died. Some evenings, they sat on the porch watching the sky turn gold and purple, speaking little but understanding much. Lily talked about school she had missed, about books she wanted to read, about a future that no longer felt impossible. Jack listened, realizing that hope could be just as frightening as despair when you'd lived without it for so long. Healing came in waves. Some nights Lily woke from nightmares, shaking and breathless, memories clawing their way back to the surface. Jack never asked for explanations. He would make tea, sit nearby, and wait until the tremors passed. In those moments, Lily began to understand that safety didn't always need words. It just needed someone who stayed, and Jack began to understand that caring again didn't weaken him. It gave his lonely life purpose. When the court finally settled her father's case, the outcome felt less important than Lily's choice afterward. Social workers spoke of foster homes and placements, but Lily surprised everyone by calmly saying she wanted to stay where she was. Not because she owed Jack anything, but because she felt seen there. Jack didn't argue. He only nodded, aware of the responsibility and willing to carry it. As autumn arrived, Lily stood one evening by the fence where everything had nearly ended. The scars on her wrists had faded, but she remembered the fear clearly. Jack joined her, worry crossing his face, but she reached out and rested a hand on the wood, steady and unafraid. She told him that stopping that night had saved her life. Jack shook his head gently, telling her she had found the strength herself. They watched the sun sink beyond the fields, two people marked by loss but no longer ruled by it. The fence that once held her captive now marked the boundary of a place she could finally call home. Winter crept in quietly, dusting the ranch with frost and turning the mornings sharp and clean. Lily discovered she liked the cold because it felt honest, nothing hidden beneath. She woke early now, sometimes before Jack, and watched the land wake up from the porch, wrapped in a thick jacket that was still a little too big for her. The ranch no longer felt like borrowed ground. It felt earned, claimed by presence and care rather than fear. With winter came new challenges. Lily enrolled in a small local school, walking into classrooms with nerves buzzing under her skin. She was behind in some subjects, ahead in others, but what mattered most was that she kept showing up. Jack attended every meeting he could, sitting stiffly in chairs that felt too small, listening more than he spoke. He didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. He was just there, steady as the land he worked, and that steadiness gave Lily courage. There were moments when the past tried to pull her back. A raised voice in town, the smell of alcohol and a stranger's breath. Each time her chest tightened, but she learned she could breathe through it. At night, she wrote in a notebook Jack had bought her, filling pages with memories she didn't want to carry silently anymore. Some pages were dark. Others held dreams she was brave enough to admit now. College, a life where her name meant more than survival. Jack changed too, though he rarely spoke of it. The weight he had carried since his wife's death began to shift. Caring for Lily didn't replace that loss, but it softened its edges. He laughed more easily. He fixed up parts of the house he'd ignored for years. Sometimes he caught himself planning ahead, something he hadn't allowed himself to do in a long time. One evening, a storm rolled in hard and fast, rattling windows and howling across the plains. Lily flinched at the thunder, old fear rising, but she didn't hide. She sat at the table with Jack, hands wrapped around a warm mug, grounding herself in the present. When the storm passed, she realized something had changed. Fear no longer decided her movements. Spring would come eventually. So would more choices, more risks, more unknowns. But standing there in the quiet after the storm, Lily understood that her story hadn't ended at the fence. It had begun there, painfully, but it was continuing here, on solid ground, with someone who chose to stay. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something to escape. It felt like something she could walk toward, one steady step at a time.